Uh, Today, we have the pleasure of discussing and talking about the social emotional evidence-based developmental strengths assessment, which I think is a novel tool to assess youth's social emotional skills. I'll be presenting on behalf, co-presenting, but she's not here today. Most of the work here came from the hard work of one of my graduate students, Marina Matsui. And a lot of the stuff that we're featuring here today is resulting from her thesis. So just want to make sure it's clear that um, a lot of this is Marina's work. Okay, so um, to forecast, we have the pleasure of having a wide array of discussants that will give their thoughts and reflections. And I think maybe some of them might even be sharing slides about how the SEEDS assessment is being used in some of their work context. They might talk story, they might share slides. I'm not too sure. But this is just kind of a forecast, and I will do a formal introduction of them when I'm done. Okay, so even though today's presentation is kind of about, I mean, it's mostly about the seeds, but I'd like to start off with a bigger picture. And the bigger picture might potentially be looking to the larger landscape of mental health services more broadly. Previous American Psychological Association president, really world-renowned therapist and researcher for treating disruptive behavior problems for youth, and premier scientists from Yale University, Al Kasdan, recently published a paper entitled Interventions in Everyday Life to Improve Mental Health and Reduce Symptoms of Psychiatric Disorders. In this paper, Dr. Kasdan makes a compelling case for an urgent need to use interventions embedded in everyday life activities to improve mental health for all youth, adults, and families. As part of his argument behind the need for using everyday interventions or interventions found in everyday life, he outlines the daunting steps usually required for obtaining treatment. He calls this the path from services to symptoms. In a typical paradigm, we unfortunately wait for youth and families to experience psychological problems before considering treatment. Furthermore, it takes some level of psychological awareness on the part of the youth and family to realize over time that these symptoms are not transient. In other words, the youth and family need to identify that these symptoms are worth paying attention to. Next, they need to decide on whether or not they want to take action. As we all know, even something as deceptively simple as deciding on whether or not to take action can be very difficult. In a recent study by Orozco and colleagues, they found that among their over 4,000 participants from the United States and six other countries in the Americas, 43% of those with mental health disorders did not feel the need for treatment. That's a big if the youth and family even decide that action is needed, they may or may not seek therapy, right? So they might think that something needs to be done. And at this point in their journey, they begin thinking through a variety of options. Therapy is just one of them. Maybe it's medication, maybe it's counseling, maybe it's coaching, maybe it's support from their church, maybe it's informal support from family or friends. Within this context, professional mental health care may be a lower priority on that list. In a study with almost 9,000 adults, now this is adults and this is in Europe, but 9,000 adults in six European countries, 10 have, I don't know how to say that, and their group found that almost one-third of adults believe, one-third of over 9,000 people believe that professional help is worse than or equal to no help at all. So maybe we're not the highest in terms of the priority list if people are seeking supports. Next, the youth and family may or may not seek treatment. Now, I have tidily and neatly made this into a 2-year timeline, but research into the average amount of time between these 2 points, the experience of psychological symptoms and seeking treatment, suggests the average is 8 years. In Kassin's original paper about this timeline, the path from symptoms to services, he did not outline this in the next step, but I've added them within the context of our work here, not our, like some of our work here in public mental health, whether that be the Department of Health or Department of Education. As we all know, in these two sectors, there's usually a step here in yellow of qualifying for formal treatment services. One aspect of this evaluation hopefully includes some sort of standardized parent and youth report survey. So surveys that we may be familiar with regard to service qualification assessments, might include the child behavior checklist, the behavior assessment system for children, the BASC, or the BIMES, Behavior Intervention Monitoring Assessment. So here's a hypothetical printout that I just took from online web, just looking up CBCL printouts. And these assessments typically disproportionately or focus on problems, right? Anxiety problems, depression problems, somatic problems, social problems, thought problems, disruptive behavior, anxiety, ADHD, and so forth. Once we get back our assessment, then we, as a team, try to create and agree on a treatment plan. Now, there are a multitude of ways for improving or for moving from intake assessment to treatment planning, but one particularly innovative and evidence-based way of going about this is looking through the treatment outcome literature, looking for guidance in terms of evidence-based practices. What types of treatments, in other words, what type of treatment practices work for what types of problems? One particularly innovative tool that both our state's Department of Education and Department of Health have made available to their therapists is the PWEBS, or Practice-Wise Evidence-Based Services Database search engine. PWEBS is an online searchable database that returns results that can be customized to match an individual child's characteristics. The search engine looks a little something like this. And on the left-hand side, we are able to search. Let's do a search together for youth treatments. If you click on youth treatments, we are able to define a wide variety of parameters in order to find evidence-based practices for a particular youth in mind. For the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to oversimplify, and I'm just going to set the strength of evidence parameter at level 2, good support or better. And basically, this comports with American Psychological Association standard guidelines for level 2 support or better. I think it's probably efficacious and efficacious or something, but it's good. It's like good supported stuff. And then we're going to click anxiety. Using PWebs, our search results would look something like this, and we would get a summary of the following, right? So your search criteria are problem type anxiety, strength of evidence level 2 or better, and there are level 2 or better support. There are 285 brand name protocols or brand name approaches for treating anxiety studied across 217 papers. One of the things that we may consider in constructing a treatment plan is the distillation or the technique commonalities across these 285 protocols. Here we see that 79% of these 285 protocols contain the discrete ingredient or technique of exposure. 67% contain the discrete technique of cognitive, and so forth and so forth. Just the idea is that potentially for consideration are these techniques here. Oops, what is happening, right? So we may consider the evidence base along with a multitude of other important and relevant data points for constructing a treatment plan. Then, hopefully, the youth begins treatment and remains in treatment and does not drop out. If they stay in treatment, we do the best that we can. However, sometimes despite our best results, treatment outcomes may be suboptimal. We may have to restart one or more of these parts of the process all over again. Performing at lightning speed, if all goes well with no problems, this may take around 2 years. I think we might all agree that we're all doing the best that we can. And also, it can be true at the same time that this is not a perfect system. I see many community helpers here, people that have dedicated to their lives to youth and families, and maybe we can all think of ways to improve the system. I apologize in advance. There will be several office memes here to celebrate. Marina and I love The Office, and I couldn't help myself to get some office memes in here. So there are potential quality improvement strategies and efforts we might consider for the path from symptoms to services. There are a ton of barriers, and here are just a few. The current path to services either predominantly ignores or does not pay attention enough to prevention-based efforts. The current path to services has a predominant emphasis on the evidence-based treatment outcome literature once folks have established mental health problems and does not easily connect with social emotional learning protocols or interventions in everyday life, right? So two of the most, or two, I don't know, the currently, but two frequently utilized SCL prevention protocols in school mental health settings. Maybe Shion and other people can jump in later, but at one point I was under the impression that it was choose, love, and mind up. These may or may not connect too easily with the treatment outcome literature. A third problem is there is a huge or huge, maybe sole disproportionate focus on problems. The suppression of anxiety, the suppression of depression, getting rid of disruptive behaviors, stop having your thought problems, stop fidgeting around, stop, stop, stop. There isn't maybe as much emphasis on strength-based approaches. Another issue with the current path from symptoms to services concerns consumers. What about the consumer? Navigating the path from symptoms to services can be very confusing in and of itself and long. And also, it can be very difficult at a consumer level to figure out what practices are derived from the evidence base if they wanted to prioritize those practices. In other words, both in terms of the service structure and evidence-based practices, it can be extremely difficult to be an informed consumer. So how can we improve the path from symptoms to services? One way, potentially, is to look for clues in the treatment outcome literature. So going back to our example for looking at technique commonalities across all evidence-based protocols for youth anxiety, maybe we can focus on some of these practice element metrics. Maybe there are clues here. Maybe we could preemptively intervene in some sort of way prior to the experience of psychological problems. In this youth example, well before the treatment planning phase, maybe we could focus on developing the skills of exposure, cognitive restructuring, psychoeducation, relaxation, problem solving, so forth, before the experience of symptoms. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, I think I have wasted the last 15 minutes of my my life listening to this. With this person, did Brad just spend 20 minutes setting up the argument for prevention? It's like I think we all agree prevention is good, and why would he spend so much time talking about prevention? Isn't this what SEL, social emotional learning curriculums, are all about? Early intervention? Well, hang on for a little bit because there are potentially barriers to prevention-based SEL skill development. Implementation of prevention-based efforts for developing social emotional skills have been met with, I think, at least three problems. First, different programs focus on different skill sets. So, for instance, two heavily utilized SEL programs, um, Choose Love focuses on self-management, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. And here are some things that Mind Up focuses on. These are not exclusive, they're not what is the word? Exhaustive or comprehensive. These are just for instances. So different programs, different skill sets. Even when they are seemingly overlapping skill sets, all the SEL programs are using different terms. So for example, is Choose Love's self-management the same as self-regulation from Mind Up? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. Another potential issue is that not all SEL skills are associated with the evidence base. If you have a 12-week program, or I don't know how many elements, but if you have a 10 to 12 element, even eight element program for an SEL program, should we be focusing on all of them equally? Do all of them enjoy the same level of support? I don't think so. And most of all, another barrier to utilization of SEL skill development potentially is reliable and valid assessment of SEL skills are not widely available. How do we reliably and validly assess positive mindset, emotional literacy? How do those things connect with the treatment outcome literature too? Of all the SEL strength-based assessments out there that have been tested for their reliability and validity, most do not align with the treatment outcome literature, the practice-wise evidence-based search engine previously. To my knowledge, just one does. Well, one does in a way as comprehensive as the seeds. Let me tell you a little bit more about the seeds. At this point, Andrea, could you put in the chat the brochure? I think Andrea hears me. I don't know.
Yep,
So
I'm trying to
okay,
do that right now.
thanks. All right, so the seeds is the social emotional evidence-based developmental strength survey. Okay, what is the seeds? Okay, so it's a youth self-report survey that assesses the extent to which youth can a child or adolescent can self-report how much they use these skills in their daily lives. Basically, the setup is there are 3 to 7 questions per each of these 12 to 13 practice elements. And the scale structure is as follows. It was meant to have a scale level, thought scale, behavior scale, and interpersonal scale, and subscale levels subordinate under those higher order or superordinate levels. So under the thought scale, there is a knowing about emotions, which comports with psychoeducation. There's a problem solving scale, challenge my negative thought scale, self-reward scale, so forth and so forth. And y'all can read this, and it's in the chat, but so I won't read it, but just the idea is that these are discrete techniques or ingredients derived from the evidence base for treating anxiety, youth depression, and disruptive behavior problems with older youth. These are the heavy hitters.
Sorry, Brad, just a quick interruption. It's not letting me send the brochure for some reason. It worked in practice, but it's not working right now. Sorry
Oh,
about
okay.
that. But I can send it
Uh,
out. I'll send it out afterwards, after
okay.
the
Okay.
presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry
Also,
about that.
if people want to look, um, the creator of the seeds, uh, he recommended you can look at this website. I mean, you can't click on it, the hyperlink, but you look at the bottom middle, it's just seedsassessment.com. That should work. Like if I don't know if the brochure is there, but you could click on it. So let's go over one example of what are some of the questions that um what does the problem solving scale look like in the seeds? So within the seeds, so comprise five questions comprise the seeds problem solving scale. Item 12, item 2, 23, 34, and 43. And these comport with um, a general outline of how to do problem solving with youth and families, right? So we state the problem, that's item 12. So if you follow the STEPS acronym, or state the problem, think of solutions, examine the pros and cons, pick one, and then see if it worked and it didn't work. That's basically what this is, right? State the problem, I think about and find what causes me stress at school and in my life. I try to think of as many solutions to my problems to find the best one, right? Brainstorm here. Item 23, pro con list. Item 34, pick one. Item 43, see if it worked, and if it didn't work, go back to another solution. Okay, so in concept, in theory, all of this is just like, yeah, that sounds good. I guess if it works, it's maybe innovative, maybe it's different. It's not psychopathology focused, not focused on suppression of problems. It's in practice element metrics, the same language as treatment outcome literature. But is it reliable? Is it valid? Like, does it perform in some reasonable way from a psychometric study? So the developer of the seeds, this is this guy named Chad Mbesutani. He was one of Bruce Trapita's students. Bruce is at UCLA, the innovator, found my graduate school mentor. I knew Chad a little bit in graduate school, but Chad lives in Korea. Chad lives in Korea and is a professor in Korea, and he developed the seeds in English, translated it to Korean, and tested it in South Korea. He had some government grants to do so, and he tested it with 1,033 Korean elementary, middle, and high school students. Results of his work was that he was able to find factor analytic support. He was able to find support that the way that people answered the questions aligned with the previous, uh, aligned with this slide here. That generally speaking, the item, the constellation of answers to all of the items on the seeds tended to cluster into these groups. At one level, it tended to cluster in this higher order thoughts, behaviors, and interpersonal, and nested under there, items tended to cluster in these practice elements. So the problem solving items tended to cluster together, and the social skills and the exposure and the so forth and so forth. Right? So we have some validity with regard to the factor structure. It was reliable in terms of internal consistencies, looking at internal consistency metrics of, I think he looked at Cronbach alphas. The items tended to covary together. And what we saw was that, uh, oops, in terms of validity, convergent validity, to what extent did seed scale scores comport with classic measures of psychopathology? We saw what we might expect. We saw that higher endorsement of using these SEL skills aligned with less psychopathology, if you will, on the Korean Youth Self-Report. And then this relates to Marina and her thesis. So that's all good. It's just like, well, that sounds fine. And then I was like, oh, well, that seeds is so awesome. I love the seeds, Shad. Can I use it for some projects here in Hawaii? I'd like to see if it's also reliable and valid here in Hawaii. So he said, sure. And then called up a bunch of friends, principals at various schools, and we're able to, took several years, but we were able to get oops, valid and valid and reliable responses for 402 fourth through sixth graders across, I think, three or four elementary schools here in Hawaii. Marina, for her thesis, repeated the analyses. Andrea, could you put the paper into the chat? Oh, I saw that you're able to upload the thing. That's great. Thanks. Could you put Marina's paper into the chat?
Yep.
And then if people want to see the exact results, you can look at figures 1 through 3 on page 6 of her publication. Basically, the factor structure held up. Internal consistencies varied a little, but were were pretty good. And we also saw the same convergence patterns. But instead of the youth self-report, we used the strengths and difficulties questionnaires. Big picture, more endorsement of SEL skills aligned with less psychopathology or problems. More endorsement of SEL skills aligned with more endorsement of the strength scale of the STQ. So that was kind of exciting because it not only is it like conceptual in general with a sample, but with fourth through sixth graders here in Hawaii, like down the road from my house. So here's a paper. I think Marina put it in the chat. Sorry, another shout out to the office. This picture, sorry, I'm going to waste 30 seconds. Uh, so Marina defended her thesis during COVID, and I wanted to dress because she loves the office so much and we love the office. I wanted to dress up as Dwight during her thesis defense. So this is a picture from her thesis defense where I dressed up as Dwight. So now what does all of this mean? Like what where are we going with this, right? So now we have a potentially reliable and valid assessment of SEL skills and strengths that align with the treatment outcome literature. Now what? So if you look in the brochure, we'll go over a couple of conceptual examples. I'll talk maybe 5 or 10 more minutes of conceptual examples, and then we'll pivot to our esteemed discussants who can tell you about what they've been doing in real life with the seeds. Okay, so looking at page 4 of the brochure, you could use the seeds at an individual level. In this hypothetical paradigm on page 4, let's look to score interpretation first. Following a standard T-score or standardized score paradigm, lower scores are less desirable, right? In the strength-based paradigm, we want to see higher scores. We want to see more usage of problem solving, more usage of relaxation. We're stepping away from suppression of problems. We want higher scores. So in this paradigm, less than 60 is in the red zone, less than desired. 60 to 80 is okay, and greater than 80 is considered a strength. So in this example, if we had hundreds and hundreds of kids to create norms, we could create T-scores and standardized scores, and we might see that for this particular hypothetical youth, that their lower skill usage is with challenging my negative thoughts. Oops, I don't know why it keeps doing that. Or cognitive, relaxation in red, second in red, and exposure facing my fears. Another one in red. Optimally, this could be a prevention-based effort. And even if not, though, the seeds could be given at any point in the path from symptoms to services. For example, the seeds could also be given to a youth that has already started treatment, and this information could potentially be helpful for a therapist to get a sense of what skill sets they might focus on. And even if they are already focusing on problem solving the previous example, knowing exactly what step within problem solving to focus on. Oh, sorry, that was the next slide here. Right, so they might, if somebody scored low on problem solving, they could look at the constellation of scores for the problem solving scale. Analysis of results could also happen at the classroom or grade level or school level or county level, any level from a prevention-based lens. Right, so here's an example, hypothetical example again from the handout, from your brochure. Let's say that we're looking at these 10 students in the class, and we could look at scale score patterns within students. Within this hypothetical example, Isabella and Mason have read scale scores with knowing about emotions, problem solving, so forth and so forth. This might be especially problematic because they don't have any blue scores. So this might be a way to think about prevention-based efforts. In addition to looking to the data from a within student perspective, within a row, we could look across students, or we could go up and down. In this example, for instance, the following practice elements from an SEL perspective, we might look across students, and this might be useful for at least two reasons. Maybe administration and teachers could do an assessment of what their particular classroom, grade, or school could focus on when shopping around for an SEL curriculum in general. Maybe the school might want to choose Mind Up because it has a lot of these elements. I don't know. Or Second Step, or some of the other things that I see in the chat. I've been trying to pay attention in the chat, but I can't really, sorry. Second, this potentially helps us avoid an all or nothing approach when time is tight. Some of our clinic's previous work has consulted with schools, and my impression, being married to a DOE teacher for also 30 some 20 20 years, 50, I don't know, a long time. She's been a teacher for a long time, is that sometimes teachers don't have all the time needed to cover SEL curriculum in their entirety. Sometimes they can't do everything. And if time is tight, maybe the seeds could give some clues about which chapters or which modules to focus on. So over the years, I've spent a lot of time rigidly perseverating on the seeds, talking to whoever will listen to me about the seeds. And here on the left, we see Marina presenting on the seeds at a conference. In the middle, I'm talking, it's a picture of Ida and Kim and David, Ida and Kim from the DOE, and David from RET, and Dan at a conference where Ida's receiving an award for some of her innovative work with all of you for Hawaii School Mental Health System. And in the bottom right, we see Puahi also hanging out at a conference, and I'm probably bothering all of them about the seeds at this point. So then at some point, Ida was like, okay, like just what is it, negative reinforcement? Like if you just be quiet, maybe we can pilot it for a little bit, and we'll see if we'll make it. We'll do a voluntary pilot. If anybody wants to voluntarily pilot it with their students, they can. And that happened in the 24 to 25 school year. Small cadre, I forget. Shion and Kimlani can help with this. I forget. I don't know. Maybe at any given time, 10 to 15 people piloting BHSs. I don't know, 8-ish. I don't know. A small cadre. And that continued in this school year, which we're halfway through, 25 to 26. We're trying to expand to teacher report, and it is deceptively difficult to expand to teacher report. So we'll just leave the teacher report version aside for today, or people can talk about it if they want to. And now I will start segueing to our fantastic panelists, our discussants. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so just going to introduce them one at a time, and then I'll turn it to Dr. McDonald to start us off. So Kim, if it's okay, I'll start us off with you, then Shion, then Kim Lani, and then Bryson. And then we can go around round robin for questions. I don't know if there are questions from the audience or whatever. But so Dr. McDonald obtained her doctorate of psychology degree from the Forrest Institute of Professional Psychology in Springfield, Missouri in August 2002. Prior to that, she completed a clinical internship at the Youth Opportunity Center in Muncie, Indiana. And having enough of the Midwest, she moved to Hawaii for her postdoctoral training with the Kapiolani Child Protection Center that same year. Loving Hawaii, she found a clinical psychologist job after her postdoc with the Hawaiʻi Department of Education in October 2003 in the Central District. She recently transferred from Central District LMW to the State School-Based Behavioral Health Program Office as the state clinical psychologist. Kim has nearly 20 years of experience in the DOE, and combined with her previous experiences, has conducted hundreds of psych evals, mainly with children and adolescents, as well as therapy, counseling services, and clinical supervision of many behavioral health specialists in the Hawaiʻi Department of Education. Outside of work, she enjoys walking, playing with her dog, any kind of crafting, and too much time on TikTok. So, welcome, Dr. McDonald.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nakamura.
Oh, I don't know how should we do it? Should we do like your
I felt like I
your
needed to
thoughts?
say thank you, but
No, oh,
you
you're
can
fine.
continue
Yeah.
with
Well,
Shion.
I'll ask you. I don't know. Should I introduce everybody first, or I don't know. I'm maybe I'll just introduce everybody first. Or Shion, what do you think? Shion, tell me what to do.
You're on my slide, so why not? Let's just full steam ahead.
Okay, so I'll just introduce everybody, and then I'll turn it. Then I'll stop talking, and then I'll turn it to Kim. So Ms. Shion Pritchard is a licensed mental health counselor and the school-based behavioral health supervisor for the Castle Complex within the Hawaii State Department of Education. In this role, she provides supervision, care coordination, and consultative services across schools in the Castle Complex in the Windward District of Oahu. Prior to her position, she served as a behavioral health specialist at Kailua High School for 4 years and has additional clinical experience with the Queen's Health Systems. Outside of work, she loves being in the water, whether it be swimming, surfing, paddling, or simply holding her breath underwater. And she loves that connection with the ocean and water. So welcome, Shion. Thank you so much. Two more introductions. Kimberly Lani is originally from Wahua, Oahu, and now resides in Ho'olehua, Molokai. She has served as a behavioral health specialist with the Hawaii State Department of Education for 23 years. Wow, respect. Across elementary, middle, and high school settings. For the past 10 years, she has supported students at Molokai High School with a focus on student mental health, social emotional development, and transition services that prepare students for adulthood beyond high school. Outside of school, Kimberly enjoys supporting their three sons in sports and school activities and farming on the family homestead. Welcome, Kimberly Lani. Last but not least, we want to welcome Bryce Wayne Tamura. He is the co-founder of the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, on campus at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and the founder and former president of Waipahu High School's NAMI on campus there. Born in Honolulu, he graduated as a valedictorian from Waipahu High School in May 2025. And in the summer of 2024, he was a telemetry medical surgical unit intern at Palimomi Medical Center, supporting underserved and vulnerable communities at high risk of chronic medical conditions. Since last summer, he has been a research intern with the National Institutes of Health at the John A. Burns School of Medicine, testing AI immunogen designs of HIV vaccine models. Within his experiences, currently he is a first-year student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Nursing through the Direct Entry and Nursing program. He hopes to give back to the community that raised him via suicide prevention, sign waving, fundraiser efforts, advocacy walks, and expanding access to mental health care and resources. Welcome, Bryson. Okay, so now I will stop sharing, and you all finally get respite from me and my references to The Office and bad jokes, and I'll turn it to Kimberly McDonald.
Thank you, Brad. Uh, Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I was looking at the list of attendees and I recognize a lot of names, so it's wonderful to see our MAP credentialed providers who are here, as well as those that are in training to be MAP credentialed providers. So thank you guys for taking the time to be here today. Yes, we started our pilot for SEEDS last school year. We did expand it this school year. We are trying to create the teacher version as well as supporting the student version for our younger kiddos. But unlike the other progress monitoring tools we've been using, and as Brad mentioned in his description of the seeds, it is nice to have something that's not just problem focused, that does focus on the strengths that the students have, as well as maybe some of the challenges they have that can help guide that treatment planning of our BHSs, which I know Shion, Kimberly are going to talk about much more in depth than I can because unfortunately I haven't gotten to use it in practice with students. So have been working and partnering with our wonderful partners at Trust Circle to integrate it into their platform so our providers are able to administer it electronically. I was going to say virtually, but that's not the word I meant, but electronically and get the scores back. And we're also working on Trust Circle being our platform to integrate our dashboard into our clinical dashboard so that data will go directly into a dashboard for the students' progress related to counseling. So we will definitely, it's a work in progress. It does take time to get the data into the system so we can see what it looks like. I actually was looking at it this weekend to get some screenshot or to get a screenshot to share if needed of some results over time. And I will admit, because I don't use it, it took me a while to figure out how to get it to display the way I wanted to. So, but once I know, now that I know that, I know it'll be easier the next time I go in to use it. So I'm looking forward to continuing the use of it as well as other questionnaires and progress monitoring tools in our system. And I don't know if was there anything specifically you wanted me to address, Brad, before I pass it on to the people who have much more experience in it than I do.
No, that was perfect. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
so
Shion,
I will pass it to Xiong.
And then Brad, is it okay if I share my screen?
I would love that. We'd be honored. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. I just have a really short kind of PowerPoint that goes with some of the narrative. So hi everyone. So my name is Shion. I work out of the Castle Complex in Ko'olaupoco, so the Windward District of Oahu. And we currently have about half of our team of behavioral health specialists implementing SEEDS this year. And I've been excited to share out a few perspectives of our team. So I see some of them here today. So I just want to thank them individually and collectively for sharing your feedback with us today. So just to start, I think as a behavioral health specialist last year at Kailua, I was able to try out the seeds, pilot it. And so what I appreciate about the seeds is that it has been a cohesive measure that complements some of the efforts we've done to improve service quality and implementation. So kind of as a program, being evidence informed or based is demonstrated with using seeds in tandem with some of our practice-wise resources and tools like our map system. So this is a quote from a BHS who started using seeds this year. So they appreciate using it as a progress measure while also partnering with students on their personal goals. Another BHS shared that they liked being able to see student strengths with their weaknesses. So keeping it person-centered for her students, but still being able to highlight and being very strength-based in her practice, which was great. So when I piloted the seeds with my high school students, I appreciated that each item, each subset could carry into a conversation in individual sessions. So there's richness to the dialogue that we have with our students in the school setting. And so seeds was a source of evidence that we could use to parse out what was maybe the primary problem or challenge that the student was currently experiencing or endorsing. And then with seeds being integrated in our Trust Circle platform, it's just been visually easy to understand the data and be able to monitor that. If anyone wants a specific example, I can share it later, but just for time constraint, over the last year, we've been troubleshooting challenges and providing feedback to our team. And so one example is offering the teacher version on the Trust Circle platform. So we've had really great, incredible support from our state office, like Kim, Ida, Brad, the developers on Trust Circle. They're awesome. I think they're wizards. Like, I don't know how they make a platform. So very cool. They've been able to make the survey accessible, easier to use as a progress measure. And I like kind of this term that I always hear Brad use, this drill down approach. So focusing on specific items, even within subsets to kind of guide treatment planning and progress. And even in the session, again, going back to the conversations we can have with our students. And big picture wise, to end kind of on an inspiring note, so one of our BHSs shared with me that they feel like right now they kind of see the branches of the tree coming together. And to me, I thought that was just really lovely because it's like now we see seeds as this other branch that connects to the system and service that we're promoting and we're growing as a whole. And I think I thought that was really cool. I think we need simplicity in our work because as BHSs, we're just juggling so much at any given time. And so I think to keep the system simple is sophistication in its of itself. And we're just excited to see the longitudinal tracking and meaningful progress monitoring. So there's a little screenshot. I know it's really small and it looks kind of like a video game picture, but there's all these kind of dots and bubbles. And so big picture wise, being able to see the longitudinal progress and sort of data from one student and also just kind of as a collective would be really cool tapestry to see. And so I hope that some of these quotes and just hearing from us can inspire you folks and continue to amplify the work we do in the school setting. So that is it. Thank you. And I will pass it over to Kiamani, I believe.
Yes, thank you,
Right.
everybody. So I just have some notes here because I don't want to forget something, but like they both said, I'm using this in real time with high school students. I've been using it, I guess, for over a year now because I was able to go back and look at some kids that I ran last year. Yeah, so I've been tracking progress. And the best part is like being able to communicate clearly with my school team. That's probably one of the best benefits for me so far. I love that it's skill-based, strength-based at the same time, breaking it down into very specific teachable skills, right? And skills that, again, going back to the teams, everyone can contribute, teachers, EAs, parents alike, right? Another thing I love is that everything's coming together. We can just pan over to the practice-wise elements and pull something that aligns with scores that we want to see some improvement on. Let's see. I like that sometimes we'll use the specific questions from the seeds because it's a different flavor of the month, right? For the teacher's perspective, oh, what are we doing now? But actually a lot of them like the language on the assessment, which was interesting to me at first, but I've come to like it as well. Because we can go back to it and see hard and concrete. This is where the student was, and this is where they're at right now. I have one example of a student that I thought was really cool. He was struggling with anxiety, particularly around math. So I administered the seeds. This one is from last year, and I've been giving it to him quarterly. When I went back and checked his scores, I was so happy to see that he had improved across pretty much everything, right? Self-reward was one of his lowest, goal setting, problem solving, all the classic stuff for anxiety, except there was one decrease. He went down in relaxation, which told me a lot, that he was working really, really hard, and now we got to kind of level it off. So I'm just super happy with the data that I get from this. Let's see, when I administer it, I know we had a lot of discussion in the past about different ways of giving it to the students. For the high school kids, I actually, the best thing for me is to administer it to them. They log in and they relax. I have the responses up here on my board, and I'll read them the question, and they just sit there and think about very quickly, what their response is. And I like being able to read their body language, whether they're hesitating or having a reaction to something, and then we can go back and talk about it. And a lot of this, well, some of these things are stuff that nobody talks to them about. And actually, in the some of my time constraints, I may never touch on some of these items. So I find out things about the students that I appreciate, like some of them really do love to journal. Some of them are against it. And one interesting thing I noticed was almost all the students on that near the end, that last question about is the world a good place, a lot of them say not at all. So it's really bringing my attention to that, that I'm sharing with the teams. But bottom line, my team really appreciates the seeds. We like the language. They actually like how simple it is. Like anybody can understand it, whereas that wasn't the case before. And the kids, they enjoyed the time as compared to the other assessments. Yeah, it just seems more friendly to them. So overall, A+. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Then we'll turn it to Bryson so in terms of game planning, we'll turn it to Bryson for initial thoughts, comments, and reactions. Then I see a couple of questions in the chat. Then we'll circle back to those in the chat, and then people can continue to ask more questions. But Bryson, take it away. We'd love to hear your initial impressions, thoughts, reactions.
Thank you. And firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Brad Nakamura and Andrea for hosting this, my fellow panelists, and you all in the audience for your attendance. Now, firstly, for some general thoughts and reactions I have, when Dr. Nakamura says, I believe this was at the beginning of the presentation, where 43% of individuals did not feel like they needed treatment. This relates to a study where I read where 68.9% of youth in Hawaii aged 12 to 17 who have depression did not receive any care. And this was done by the National Alliance on Mental Illness in 2021. And upon reading this is the reason why I created NAMI on campus at UH Manoa and at Waipahu High School, as I wanted to be that bridge between clinical care and the outreach aspects to my community. And secondly, when during part of the presentation where it discussed about the social emotional learning protocol, such as Choose Love, I remember doing that during my homeroom period at Waipahu High School. And it is helpful to learn about the different topics each week to, uplift yourself or your peers or your friends, your family, and your community. However, I did notice that some individuals and even teachers did not take this seriously or even tend to skip it. Me personally, I like doing the activities, so I didn't skip it. And more generally, as to how I applied the seeds concept into my life and I guess my my activities here at UH Manoa, I uh, I developed kind of like temperature checks in my nursing cohort to assess how they are feeling, and to learn about their greatest worries or their accomplishments. And the outcome of this is to share it with our Student Nurses Association, and to think of creative ways to support nursing students who are struggling in the program.
Thanks, Bryson. That was terrific. Really value you, and I really appreciate you coming here today to share your perspective and your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you. Um, so maybe I see at least two questions in the chat. It's just there's various things. The first from Raquel Chang. This is for I can't answer it. I don't know if anybody from the DOE can, but I'm just going to honor the questions that were asked. For the DOE, would this replace the BIMES 2 or be used in addition to?
So right now it can be used in addition to. We are planning to phase BIMAS 2 out as our progress monitoring tool, and we are working on developing an intake procedure for students, especially who receive counseling as a related service, that will have kind of a small battery of like the SEEDS questionnaire, potentially a problematic focus questionnaire such as the Ohio scales that ChemHD uses, so we can do some cross comparison with our sister agency, and problem specific questionnaires that are available, and we're currently building some of those are already available in Trust Circle for administration, and we were working on building out the other ones to be available. So yes, it is part of the replacement.
Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
Next question, if I'm tracking from Anna Dalton to everyone, uh, is seeds used weekly or quarterly? Can we adjust it when we use it as a progress monitoring tool? I would love it. I hate to put her in the spot, but I would love it if Kimberly Lani and or Shion could answer this. So, given their expertise, and I would love to learn from them as well. So again, the question is seeds used weekly or quarterly? Can we adjust when we use it as a progress monitoring tool?
So the way that I use it is, but in the beginning, I was actually giving the full seeds every quarter. And then eventually I figured out, oh, I can just give sections. So it's case by case for each student. Some kids come in with just one domain of interest, and then there's other students that come in with deficits across the board. So if I have a student that is pretty low across the board, I will give the full seeds every quarter. And then maybe another student that just has, a focus on one particular or two particular areas, I'll just pull out those sections in the quarter. And then in between the quarterlies, I develop my own little sample of stuff that I want to look at that's aligned to the practice-wise elements too. And then I throw that on my dashboard, like all of it together.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that. I just pulled up I took a screenshot just now of my trust circle example. And so I think this might maybe help visually, if it's okay if I just share this real quick. So something that I think Kimlani was sharing too is that you could, after administering the whole seeds, focus on a certain subset. And so this is not all of the subsets, but just looking at it on the Trust Circle platform, you can start looking at each subset and however many times you administer it. And so for this example, I did the full seeds for this one student. Poor them. They were okay with it though. They did the full seeds 3 times. So I did one at the beginning of the school year, one right after break, sort of halfway in between the semesters, and then one last time towards the end. And so you can kind of compare the overall trend and see the latest score and then your averages here. Yep.
One thing
Amazing. Thank you.
we did not share along those lines is for this year's second phase of the pilot, the direction was the full assessment at the beginning of the school year slash treatment course, and then the full at the end of the school year slash treatment. And then between in Trust Circle, we've set up that you can just administer several scales. You don't have to administer all of the scales. So you can, like if a student was low on 3 of the 12 scales, you can just administer those 3 more frequently. So you can get a little bit more frequent progress monitoring data because our MAP people know that having that data helps them make decisions regarding the treatment course. So having that more frequent data is available.
Thank you. Um, I'm looking, sorry, I'm doing my best to try to track the questions in the chat, and then there's a Q&A. Um, one question that was DM'd to Andrea and myself was, how does the seeds compare to the Basque, and Basque 2, Basque 3, MIMES 2? Um, I think, and I'll let other experts on the panel, this they probably know more than me, but I guess just to start off, a potential initial response is that compared to the Basque and the Basque 2, Basque 3, um, there are no problem, I guess, problem or symptom scale scores on the seeds in that way, right? So there's no anxiety scale score or depression scale score or anything like that. Um, and I guess in that way it's similar with the BIMES. The BIMES, in terms of its two positively oriented scales, I think one is it like I don't know. I'm looking to my DOA friends to save me. There are two kind of positively valence scale scores. For those two, though, they don't. For It's not right or wrong. It's just different. But the two positively worded scale scores in the BIMES, where higher scores are better, those more strength-oriented scales, they do not comport with the specific practice elements in terms of the treatment outcome literature. So although useful, and it is great that it's using strength-based approach for those two scale scores that escape me the specific name, it's not as translatable, I guess, would be my
Social
perspective.
and
But
academic functioning.
social and academic functioning. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. So, but I'll turn it to Shion and Kim, the Kimberleys, I guess, to to respond. Um, any thoughts about usage comparisons, big picture, small picture, Basque biomass seeds?
I I'll just jump in with my experience opinion is it is kind of hard to compare although Basque does have some adaptive scales where you could interpret them as areas of strength. BIMAS does too. Um, it's the main difference is C's is just looking for those strength is all strength-based focus versus a clinical problem focus that the other scales are. So it's kind of apples and oranges to a certain degree. But the biggest part, to me, the plus is it connects directly to treatment versus trying to have to figure out, okay, kid is elevated on the anxiety scale on the BAS2. What does that mean? What do I need to work on? And there's a lot of areas of related to anxiety that you could pick to work from, but SEEDS is going to give you idea of how to be more strategic in that focus to start. So that's my opinion.
For me, I I don't know. It's been a while since I've given the biomass, since I've been all seeds lately. But the general feeling is that I don't know if it's because we're just so many more of us are here together, and there's just feels a lot more supportive for this seeds push. And like I said, the language of the assessment is just more relatable with teachers and students, and I like the dashboard.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like as a BHS, right? Like we do our own assessments and we do our own progress measure when we work with students. And but I often, whenever I do anything like for work, I'm just like, well, why am I doing this? And like, what am I doing with this information? And if I'm asking a student to sit and do this survey, what kind of context am I going to be able to get so that it can support them? And I think both Kim said it really well. I think it's really rich, but I think going back to the treatment planning, I think it really is a great kind of jump start at kind of from the get-go when you are able to look at the different items and really kind of zone in on specific strengths and weaknesses with the student. And then moving forward, like what is the sessions actually going to look at? And then it just pairs very well with practice wise and some of the guides that practice wise offers.
Thank you. Looking to our dear friend, I mean, we're all friends, but Susan Rocco in the Q&A. Want to reinforce, always love questions from Susan, and also want to reinforce Susan for using the Q&A. I really like the focus on strengths or the results of the assessment shared with the students' parents so they can be aware and reinforce their child's perceived strengths. Oh, Shiono's typing an answer. Or I'll let. It's weird on my thing. It says, or there's a cursor there or something. But maybe I can turn it to the group about their initial thoughts and reactions to Susan's comment.
For me, when we have our annuals, that's when I'm going over results with parents, unless we have a very specific meeting in between. Yeah.
I would encourage specialists to share it at any time that they talk to parents. And for that reason, to get that reinforcement and support of the kiddo and acknowledging their strengths as well as supporting any areas they might be working on.
And to add on to that, sorry, my goals right now my IEP goals are including seeds. So it's kind of like we have to go over it right at that point. So we're discussing it. This is a new, tool, and that's what it means when it's written into the IEP. So yeah, there's some review of that at that time.
Thank you. Kind of want to go. Sorry, I'm still looking at because I want to give our leadership from Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division a chance to respond to. So maybe we'll go with a couple more questions, then we'll turn it over to Kurt and Jamie. Just kind of looking through here. Oh, this is uh, Malintha. Sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm a new BHS this school year and would like to learn more about the seeds and how to implement it with my students. Where would you recommend I begin? That might be more of a Kim McDonald question. I don't know. Sorry, Kim, to
You
call
can
you
reach
out.
out to your clinical supervisor and or myself, and I will connect you to resources to help you with that.
All right. Maybe we want to honor our host, the host of this whole thing and the CEUs and everything. Well, in addition to Hawaii Psychological Association, is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division. So it'd be great to get maybe any initial thoughts and reactions from Jamie and or Kurt, and then we'll see if we have time to ask any more questions. But maybe turning it to Jamie and or Kurt.
You want to go first, Jamie? You want me to?
Sure, I can go.
Okay.
I'm just very excited about the seeds. When I saw it, I think it's, with the kids we work with, often they're having a lot of struggles, and people are kind of seeing them as they're doing this, and this wrong, and that's why we're seeking services with you, and that's why we're asking for help. And um, when I saw this, I thought to myself, wow, it would be really powerful for a kid just to be able to fill something like this out and see that they have some things that they're doing well, or to give them ideas about things that might help them. Because I think often in mental health services, it's really easy for us to just focus on the negative when we're trying to get to this other goal of positive things. So I'm hoping that it's something that we can incorporate a little bit more in what we're doing and how we're looking at kids, and also how the team and everyone else that's involved in their lives is looking at them. So I'm excited about it. I'm hoping we can do more with it at CAMD, and I'm excited to hear how much DOE is doing to incorporate this. It's pretty cool.
I don't really have anything that exciting to say. But one of the things I was reflecting on um, in CAMD as the medical director, I get lost sometimes in my own world, in the CAMD world, and I'm just focused on CAMD stuff, which is part of the reason why I was late coming to this presentation. I really apologize to the presenters and my other panelists and to Brad. I was just caught up in, CAMD stuff, but the typical CAMD youth, they have a high level of mental health needs, and we really rely on the DOE and teachers and stuff like SEEDS to really help complete the continuum, the spectrum of, helping kids with mental health needs. And, these folks are frontline and working with kids, helping them in their, mental health and psychological, social development and everything. And I'm just really grateful to learn about what's going on, and to, know that, there are these really thoughtful efforts to be data driven and to use evidence, and to, use strategies that are actually going to be useful in helping to prevent kids from ever needing to have to come to CAMD in the first place. And it's just really great to come to these presentations and to learn more about what y'all are doing, and now I have a little bit of a better appreciation for all the hard work and efforts that you guys are doing with your students. And it's just really heartening, and I'm really grateful to y'all and for stuff like Seeds. And yeah, and I'm just really excited by it. So thank you for sharing what this is with me.
Oh man, no better way to end with that, Kurt. I mean, you and Jamie, you guys, you're all the best. So blessed to be a part of so many exciting things going on. Maybe we can, as we're kind of rounding it out, Andrea, I think, is there an announcement about psychology CEUs and the survey? Be on the lookout for a survey or something. Could you kind of
Yes.
bring it to a
Yes.
close?
Of
We'll end a little early.
course. Yeah, of
Can I
course.
can I
Oh,
jump
yes.
in real quick? I just want to express a specific appreciation to Bryson for coming today. We really appreciate having a perspective of someone who I'm going to say is much younger than myself and much closer to high school than I am. I really appreciate the work you've done with NAMI. I would love to know at some point, I'll connect via email maybe with you if that is continuing at Waipahu High School, because I was just there on Friday and I would love to connect. We have our Here to Help program, which would be an excellent connection with whatever efforts are still going on at Waipahu High School. And I also want to throw in a plug. I mentioned Trust Circle as a platform that we're using for SEEDS administration. And it's also originally as a platform for student well-being as well as staff well-being. So it has the ability to students can monitor the emotions with full rollout. They can do journaling and other kind of things to support their mental health and well-being. So we are continuing to expand supports to students within the department. So I appreciate you being here so much, Bryson.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your kind words, and I'm happy to connect with you after this discussion.
Lovely. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our presenter and our panelists and our discussants. And also thank you all so much in the chat for all of your questions. This was we had a lot of questions and it was just very exciting to be able to kind of feel like we were like talking to you all. But in terms of announcements, we would just greatly appreciate it if you would fill out. I'll be sending out a forthcoming like a Qualtrics survey for today's webinar. It'll be sent to whichever email that you use to register for today's roundtable. And yeah, so just please be on the lookout for that survey. And we just want to say thank you again to our partners at Hawaiʻi Psychological Association and Hawaiʻi Behavioral Health Connection for co-sponsoring this roundtable presentation and offering free continuing education credits for HPA members. And just thank you all so much for your engagement. We will be posting the recording of this roundtable on our Help Your Keiki website, and that will all be available via email. So yes, thank you so much for your attention and your time.